This past year, one of my businesses crossed 24 million in sales. I married the woman of my dreams in Brazil, and I became a private pilot all in the last 12 months by the age of 26. And I want to share with you the top 7 lessons I've learned along the way that I wish I knew years before. The first lesson, and quite frankly mistake, being not learning and reading enough. Listen, so in 2021, I made my first $1 million online with my online business. And that year leading up to it, I had read dozens and dozens of books. I was so hungry for learning new information, starting from self-development books when I was in university, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, to more business tactical books. But by the time 2021 rolled in, I entered what I called a information restriction diet, which is I would find myself getting into so much analysis paralysis of consuming so many books, and I told myself, you know what? For a full year, I'm going to stop consuming and I'm just going to go into full execution mode. And while for that phase of my life, it was good. We went from $1 million in lifetime sales to, in 2022 to 2023, crossing the $10 million sales mark. What I realized and I learned along the way is there's so many high-level business tactics, so many different things I could learn from my own personal development, from investing, from relationships and marriage, and even my relationship with God. And so one thing that I did in January of 2024 was I bought a Audible subscription, and I also invested into YouTube Premium, which were both respectively about $10, $15 a month. And I just started consuming a YouTube video a day from business influencers, health influencers, people I respect and admire in the space. And I began reading also a book a week. And the amount of knowledge and wisdom and tactics, insights that I gained along the way were so game-changing for every aspect of my life, even outside of business. And I wish I never took that information restriction diet. And to give you a little tactical golden nugget of how I went about this, there's this principle that I learned from Tony Robbins called NET. That stands for NET, no extra time. For me, as a busy business owner running 3 separate businesses, I didn't have the time. And so what's allowed me this year to read over 70 books, yes, 70 books, is that 65 of those 70 books were actually not read, but listened to. And so what I did was I actually combined reading books with working out, because I still train 4 to 5 times a week. And so rather than flipping through pages within a normal book, I listen to the audiobook on 2.5x speed, and I will typically go through a book a week just simply by training for 4 or 5 hours cumulatively within the gym. The next lesson is that I should have invested way earlier. I took focus to the extreme, like too extreme. All of my friends said, Richard, you're an idiot for just keeping millions in the bank and not investing it. And what I realized at that time is I don't care. My number one asset class is my business, so I'm just going to focus on that. But the reality is, had I just learned and took 2-3 hours out of a weekend to learn how to invest, I could have put those into relatively safe S&P 500 index funds and grown 7, 8, 10% year over year. And if I had put it into higher risk asset classes like Bitcoin, like Ethereum on the crypto assets, man, these things would have had a 300, 400% return conservatively during that bull run cycle. And that was something that I did not participate in within at all over the last couple of years. And so in 2024, I took investing extremely seriously, and I actually hired advisors, consultants, not to manage my money for me like a hedge fund or financial advisor, but rather consultants that actually taught me the skill set. And I really, really learned that it's one skill set to make money, it's another skill set to multiply money. And with a business, you're not multiplying money. With a business, regardless of how profitable my business can be, whether it is $100,000 a month, whether it's $500,000 a month, heck, even if I make $1 million in profit, I'm still trading my time for money. I'm still a slave to my business in the sense that I have to work, I have to show up. Versus with investors, they can do the research, deploy capital into the asset, and truly watch that asset class grow in the most passive form possible over a 3-month, 6-month, 12-month period. This next lesson is going to be very specific to anyone who is running a business. And for me, it was not hiring an operator to run the day-to-day operations of my company sooner. My main online education business has been hovering anywhere from $7 to $10 million a year in top-line annual revenue for the last 2.5 years now. The biggest struggle that I've had with breaking past this has quite frankly just been me being the guy running the day-to-day show. I'm the one leading the sales team on the daily basis. I'm the one leading the fulfillment huddle, making sure that the quality control of every single division within the company is going smoothly. And this year, I actually groomed someone who was a top salesperson on my team, who then I grew into the sales manager and eventually began to give more and more responsibility to become more of a COO, second in command. And this individual conservatively saved me 15 to 20 hours of my week of running all of these meetings that not only just took a lot of time, but actually sucked a lot of my energy. If you're at the multiple seven-figure level, and you just feel that you're into the swing of things, you're stuck in the same rat race, the same cycle of doing the same stuff over and over, at that point, it would probably make sense to install an individual where you could duplicate yourself to remove you so that you can focus on higher level things. And this ties into the fifth lesson, which for me was chances are your talent just isn't good enough. So one thing that I'm known for within my organization, in the business that I do, is I have extreme loyalty. Meaning, if I have someone that I enjoy working with, that I think is the right culture fit, works hard, shows up, great attitude, I will keep that person on my team and fight for that person to stay on for as long as possible. And one of the biggest lessons I had to learn this year is maybe the reason why my business isn't growing as fast as I want it to grow is not actually because of anything from my perspective of, man, am I just not coaching hard enough? Am I just not enforcing quality control? Am I not just driving with a high enough standard? Well, it's actually just the person who is executing and deploying the instruction of what I give. And I know this is not the most motivational say, but the reality is most people are not going to cut it. Only 16% of people get accepted to UCLA. Only 4 people get accepted into Harvard. Why? Because there is, by definition, people who are significantly better than others. What I have really emphasized this year in any of these projects that I take on now, the very first thing that I ask is not how do I go about this, but rather who do I go about this? Because the who is actually the key to the how. Perhaps the quote that resonates the most from this is from Russell Brunson I got. You're just one hire away from $1 billion company. And I can tell you with certainty that for me, it's not one, but rather 3 hires. One being a talented creative director who can own all the content creation, media distribution for turning my current humble YouTube channel stuck at 150,000 YouTube subscribers and turning that into the machine that will grow to 500,000 and eventually 1 million subscribers. Having a technical co-founder and chief technological officer for deploying the software company that I intend on going all in on in this coming year. And then thirdly, finding finally a CEO who can truly remove me from the day-to-day operations of managing the setter team, the phone setter team, the closer team, basically all the chaos that happens with running a 8-figure organization. Those are the 3 hires. And I'm very, very confident that if I get these 3 people on lock, the right talent, I have an $8.3 million a month, $100 million a year company coming up within the next 5 years. This next lesson is something that has been a massive reinforcement of something that I've been doing for the last few years, which is do something extremely difficult and challenging and fun outside of your professional life. So in the last few years, especially starting in 2022, I took on a challenge of learning Spanish. And the reason why was because my girlfriend at the time that I was dating, who thank God I married, was living in Argentina at the time. And she spoke Portuguese because she's Brazilian, and she also spoke Spanish. Now, I decided with Spanish as the language I want to learn because I felt it had a greater utility, especially relative to the United States. So I became fluent in Spanish within 8 months, doing a very, very extreme regiment of 3 classes on a weekly basis, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with 5 hours of homework from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m., my first hour of deep work every single day. En 6 meses aprendí español y ahora mismo puedo hablar 100% contigo en español. Now I only speak Spanish in home with my wife. And I did that as a personal challenge, but then also I knew that that had significant business implications in the sense that I could duplicate my content and speak Spanish. I can travel and I live in a whole bunch of new countries. And even just on a personal level, every time we go to Spain, every time we go to Colombia, we go to different parts of the world, it is so amazing to be able to interact in a completely new environment. And it's been the most fulfilling thing. So that was 2022. But in 2024, I decided that I wanted to have a skill set of learning how to fly a plane. And the reason why is because number one, I've always been really passionate about planes. I aspire to own my own jet one day in the future. And so I told myself, you know what, let me take this on. Completely underestimated how long it was going to take. I thought it was going to take 3 months. It took me 9 months of going every single week to the airport multiple times a week to get the test. But thank God I did get my private pilot license and I can fly single engine land-based planes. And it's been an absolutely incredible experience doing so. And if there's ever a zombie apocalypse and I need to get the heck out of my state, I can fire up a small plane. I do not need to go with international airports. And so that's been incredibly fun. And I'm sure one of my goals inside of the next few years is to buy my first plane. And at that point, I'm going to be able to do some epic content. But really my challenge for any of you is, it doesn't have you flying a plane. It doesn't have you learning a new language. But what are you doing outside of your typical daily grind of your 9 to 5, your typical grind of your business, of your university? I think that as a man, you need to push yourself to do hard things. We're designed by God to do difficult things, to challenge our character and become the highest version of self. And for 2025, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's something to do with Mandarin Chinese. 现在我可以跟你讲中文，反正我的中文没有太好, right? I've forgotten a lot about Mandarin Chinese, especially because I don't speak it with anyone else besides my parents. So Mandarin Chinese is probably the next. This next lesson here is really personal to me. It's a fun one, which is it's much, much better to travel to live than to travel to vacation. So this year, I've gone to probably 11 countries, all different places all over the world. And in all of these different trips, every single one of them was only for 1 to 2 weeks. And every single one of them was living in a hotel room. It was packing up a suitcase, going there, not really understanding the local restaurants, the local communities. It was just going to a tourist area and you get there, you're exhausted, you crash, and you basically just do all the touristy stuff. We did that in Cocherville, France on a ski trip. We did that in Saint-Tropez. We did that in Paris, France. We did that in Madrid, España. Just all these countries where we just got to experience the scratching of the surface. And every single time I left one of these trips, I always looked over at my wife and I said, we didn't spend enough time there. Like I barely got to understand the city. And the one thing that I learned from 2022, which is where I learned Spanish, is I moved out. I moved to Buenos Aires, Argentina for 6 months. And that is what forced me into the full culture where I attended Hillsong Buenos Aires. I went to a Christian church that was Spanish speaking only. I made best friends with people in Argentina. I actually have a pretty significant part of my audience that follows me that lives in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And so I had a whole bunch of clients actually reach out and I became really good friends with in the city. And that was, I gotta say, one of the most fulfilling, fun parts of my life. I was 23 years old at the time and I craved that. And I didn't get that on any of these trips. So I'm incredibly grateful for these short 1 week trips. They were just that, trips, not real living experiences. And so moving into 2025, what I'm gonna be a lot more intentional about is rather than doing a quick in and out kind of trip, rather actually setting up shop within a home for 30 days minimum, where I can taste the local food. I can actually build real relationships. I can feel the sense of community, learn the language, study the religions, and understand the worldview of a particular area and make friends with the local entrepreneurs and have some form of mastermind. And this coming year, I got a pretty extensive trip planned where I plan on going back to my motherland of my family, China, and doing a whole tour visiting my family. So stay tuned because I'm going to be keeping you guys posted on that. And very realistically doing that in Europe as well. The reason is truly because I really want to experience living and not just vacationing. And I could just say one of the greatest experiences I could pass on to you is go to a foreign country of a completely different language. And if you have the privilege of working remotely the same way that I do, I can run my businesses from virtually anywhere in the world. Go live somewhere. Who knows? You might meet the love of your life, have some of the best food. You might meet some of your new best friends that will attend your wedding. And that's just something that I think every single individual should have the experience to be able to do. And I think I say this to you every single year, which is that none of this would have been possible if it was not for the favor and blessing of God, and if it was not for you guys and your support. And you guys keeping up with my journey, supporting me every step of the way. On Instagram, I get so many messages from people that come from you, from YouTube, telling me how much I inspire you guys, how many lives I've changed, how my content has served you in helping you want to start your own business, improving your high performance, improving your relationship with God. And, this coming year, I really, really do spur you and challenge you to do at least one of these 7 things that I pass on to you to make this the best year yet. So remember that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I bid you an incredible start to this coming year. See you in the next video.